So I do appreciate the book and the title. I got to admit, I haven't gotten a copy here fast enough. But yes, the Supreme Leadership Guide for the Aspiring Authoritarian. So lots of tips and tricks, I imagine. I mean, this has been a void that needs to be filled. I mean, there is no dictatorship 101 or how to be a tyrant in post-secondary education. So you've given aspiring dictators the means now to start figuring out how to get into that world of authoritarianism.
Yeah, I used my secondary education to do good for a while, and then I decided to turn it towards the evil. So it was a good way to transition from my degree in advanced degree in international relations and democracy and governance, and go, hey, what if we just turn this around for a little bit and see what it looks like? And look, the real fun about this is it's not just a satirical humor book, but it's showing a little bit about the decay of democracy that I've seen in my work. I've been in this industry for about 12 years now, and it's interesting to see for people who aren't in this industry to see, hey, look, this is how quickly you can see your government and your democracy be exploited by just one person or a group of elites. It's pretty quick.
I was supposed to say, yeah, individual liberties. I mean, we've kind of seen more challenges in this last couple of years than we have probably in decades for a number of reasons, I guess. But there's nothing like a great emergency to give the authoritarian-minded the inspiration to try and see how far they can push the limits. And I just like things being brought up you can have a tongue-in-cheek way and still examine a serious message.
Absolutely. I think, one of the things that I've learned in my work, and I've been in government for 12 years in intelligence agencies, with nonprofits, and a lot of people look at government and democracy and they get bored because, most of the books about it are 400 pages and they're dry as hell. And what I'm trying to show here is that for the common person here, this is how easy it is for someone to take over your rights and your freedoms. Like it's incredibly easy, and it's happening more often now. The impetus for this book came in 2010 when the Arab Spring happened. We all thought social media was going to support the improvement of people's lives, and it ended up giving a method for dictators to utilize it to take more power. And that's what we've seen.
Yeah, well, information, I mean, it can cut both ways. I mean, I don't expect you to know too many on Canadian issues, but things that we've got coming down from Parliament, it's been scary lately. We've got a bill coming forth that is going to give customs agents the power to force you to give the password to your phone or tablet when you're crossing the border so they can look within it in case you're carrying any information that's not supposed to come into the country. Again, people brush that off saying, I got nothing to hide. Well, careful, guys. This is, your whole world is on these digital devices now. And this is a government that feels entitled to go and look into it.
Yeah, you make a good point, Corey. This is the modern version of how dictators control the message and its information. And that's what we've seen. Arab Spring 12 years ago, we thought Twitter and social media was going to actually support the prominence of democracy, and instead dictators and dictator wannabes have used it to actually either delay the information, remove the information, create misinformation, or disinformation. And we see that with Russia. We see that with China. We see that with the West now that it's been struggling with it 6 years. I mean, I'm the US, you're Canada. We see it.
Yeah, well, and we see sometimes dictators come into power through a revolution or a big turnover or a military coup or something like that. But it seems with us in the Western world, we're doing it more with a incremental frog in water sort of approach. But the outcome is going to be the same if we don't pay attention pretty soon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not as slow moving as we think. We see it in the developing world in the Middle East, and we go, well, that wouldn't happen to us, but it's happening. It's been happening for decades, and it's just been a little bit slower because we've had the institutions and the infrastructure to avoid it, where the developing world hasn't. But it's coming, and it's becoming easier and easier for them because people don't know what the hell is going on anymore. It, it's and I hate to just push on social media, because here we are on social media doing this, but it's taking complex situations and driving them down to 280 characters. You can't do that, but it's easy. And
Yeah, and the amount of effort being made by, well, authoritarians, it doesn't have to be necessarily on a government level. It could be on a corporate level, but to want to control that information, they see the power of it, and that's why they're drawn to it. I mean, Arab Spring did expose Twitter as a very powerful tool, actually, an influential one. It made us realize it's more than just a novelty for people to exchange, cat pictures and chatter. But at the same time, now it could turn into something non-beneficial, and we got to watch for that. I mean, as well with every other platform.
and I'll put one an additional point on that, Corey, is what I would say is that it's not just Twitter. It's internet should be a fundamental right now. It's like water, food, and housing. Those are fundamental rights for people to exist in the world today, and internet and social media as a subset of that is a fundamental right. And dictators are using that, or wannabe dictators, wherever you make the line in life, is they're using that as a way to deny rights here. And that's what we've been seeing. And I mean, you need that to do work. You need that to pay bills. You need that to basically communicate these days. And we're seeing that utilized more and more against the people who need it. And you make a good point. I just want to add this additional point because my second book is going to be So You Want to Be a Capitalist. And I think you probably agree with me that they and dictators probably match. This isn't against capitalism. This is against the people who abuse capitalism in that way.
Yeah, well, there's crony capitalism, and there's
Exactly.
you couldn't call the oligarchs in Russia proper capitalists. I mean, they're entrenched with a dictatorial government.
Yeah, but they use capitalism as a way to get there. Yeah,
you can't open a corner store and compete with one of those guys. You'll find it burned to the ground all of a sudden. So it's kind of a misnomer to call it capitalism.
Yeah, well, Putin's 7-Eleven is great, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's funny. I got to actually travel the Soviet Union at the end of the 80s before they sort of started to open up, I guess you could say. At least, it was formerly Soviet at that time. And when we crossed the border, they searched the bags. This is typical in customs. But the difference was they weren't looking for drugs and contraband like that. They were looking for books and cassettes because information was everything. They wanted to make sure the citizens never saw what's happening outside. They got their source from Pravda. They got their cassettes from local, God, I couldn't imagine how terrible the Russian bands were. But just the extreme lengths they went to make sure that this sort of stuff didn't come in shows that how important they realize that information is. And dictators today realize the same thing. And that source of information now is the digital world.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we have a digital samizdat. I mean, and that's a big thing. And dictators have been able and wannabe dictators have utilized it so well. And not only that, not just social media, but just controlling the internet. I mean, you talk about Myanmar, they can shut down the internet. Turkey shut down the internet. Iran shut down the internet. So they could just control it because that's the only way to communicate anymore. I mean, you can't just share pieces of paper across that to build a following. So it's the same. It goes back to my point about the decay of democracy, where dictators have found a way to exploit democracy to feign legitimacy. And that's what's going on. And they're just using social media and the internet as a way to better do that.
Well, in our case, again, I know our Canadian examples are a little different. We've actually got a number of bills coming through that are literally modeled to control the internet for the preservation of Canadian culture, they say, for the preservation and fighting of fake news, they say. So they're going to accredit news organizations and say, you're fake, you're not. That's a dangerous road to go down, giving the government full control on what you can or can't see on there. But they are very much trying to get into that. Maybe even some are well-meaning, but you can't give that authority to someone
Well,
else.
you make a good point because everything's well-meaning when it comes to theory and bills, and then you get to the practicality about it, and it ends up being abused, and that's
Oh,
what's happening.
and we
That's
had
what's
the
happening around. I know it's happening in Canada. I apologize. I don't know all
It's
the
all right.
things that are going on, but in the U.S., it's happening in a very big sense. It's happening in Europe. It's just a easy way to abuse it, and I think that's a key point here. Is what we're seeing is that I'm talking. My book's about dictators, but dictators aren't just your Kim Jong Uns or your Putins. They are your uh, parliamentarians. In Canada, I assume, and congressmen here. They find ways to abuse those rights and then abuse that freedoms.
Well, in our complacency, I mean, we're our own worst enemy to a degree. So I'm sure it made even news. Well, it made international news when we invoked the Emergencies Act in Canada, which is our version of the War Measures Act, to combat protesters in Ottawa. I mean, they're still open to discussion whether those protesters should have been shut down or cracked on upon. But to actually, it's a form of martial law to suspend civil rights for that period of time, which meant they could arrest people without warrant. It meant they could actually force tow truck drivers, forced labor. If they refused to tow trucks, they'd be thrown in jail. I don't think enough people realize just how significant that line they crossed was when that happened. I fear the precedent it set because it kind of let the government know if we can convince people it's for the public good, we can really do a lot of interesting things here without bothering with individual rights.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think I can't say I'm a full a libertarian here, but I think that there is a balance here, and I'm a little bit uh, disappointed in the way that it government kind of takes the full attack on everything versus the full freedom that people want to enjoy. And I think that we tend to forget the world of regulation, and there's I mean that's how society works to an extent. I just think the government tends to get too uh, you know overbearing at a time, and and then that causes a bad reaction from everyone. And the U.S. is a great example. And again, I'm not an expert on Canadian politics, but I assume that it's a similar thing. Here in the West, we've just uh, we're starting to see that. We're starting to see that um, you know tension, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and our Western democracies are all sort of grappling with similar issues. I mean, we'll have some nuances between our constitutions and things like that, but for the most part, we've got similar, particularly Canada, the United States, similar cultures and governance systems and challenges, I guess you could say, in these times. So, getting back to your book, I'm just looking at some of that stuff. Yeah, a satirical leadership guide for aspiring autocrats and assholes, which is great. We embrace assholes a lot on this show. The autocrats we can have some issues with, but
Yeah, yeah.
some of the stuff from within your book, though, before we let you go, just to kind of cover what's inside for this, rather than our dry discussion on the realities here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm sure people love dry discussion on politics all
Oh,
the
on
time.
this show, this is what we do a lot of. So we're allowed to laugh too, though.
Yeah. Well, just for you and for everyone listening, look, it's just a satirical humor book. I've spent 12 years in the world of government and corporate, and I'm so I've seen so many leadership books about how to be a leader, and why shoot for CEO? Go for the top. But the real um, uh, grouping here is that it's a step-by-step guide of how dictators become dictators and how you can be one if you want to. I mean, just give me a little credit and don't kill me. Um, but and then it gives you a lot of history about previous dictators, where it came from, and a lot of the dictators that we have today, and probably places you didn't think of. And the reality of this is, look, you're not going to go and read a 400-page book about dictatorship and democracy. So why not have a little laugh and learn about, how democracy works and how it can be exploited, because it's pretty damn easy and it's been happening for a while.
Yeah, though I wouldn't want to discourage people from reading The Road to Serfdom and some of the other good publications.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm not, I didn't mention any other books, but.
But I mean, it's great. And satire is important, and it makes serious messages digestible. I mean, there's so many great long columns. I mean, I've written columns, and I see that some fantastic political cartoonist has actually managed to get out in one image what I had to write 800 words to try and get across, and they will have reached far more people than I have. So
comedy can make messages. It really can. And I started in comedy and then I went to politics. And then I came back to comedy. So that's how it happened. And I hope that the people who, don't want to read, a Samuel Huntington book can read this and go, oh, okay. At least I get it a little bit and I have some time. It's, it's a 200-page book. It's pretty short.
Well, comedy and politics are a lot more closely related than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, they are. Too closely related.
Corey, too closely for monologues and books and everything else.
Yeah.
So, well, I really appreciate that. And as you said, it's packaging something as a serious issue, but make it digestible and make it some fun. Some of the quotes, I mean, the things online, let's see, your review from Vladimir Putin goes great with polonium tea and failed invasions of Ukraine. We've got to let ourselves laugh at times.
Yeah, and what I would say to everyone is dictators hate being made fun of, so laugh at them. Laugh at them as much as you can because they hate that. And that's, if you can't do anything else, at least laugh at them.
True enough. They're all about vanity, if nothing else, that's for sure. Well, thank you very much for coming on to discuss that and for releasing that book. I hope we haven't exposed you to too many of the authoritarians and tyrants. And if you manage to survive the purge or the Hague trials, we'll have you back perhaps when your next book comes out there.
Well, thank you for having me, Corey. And to all of my aspiring authoritarians in Calgary and wherever you're viewing, please let me live for a little longer. I just got a little more.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. It was good talking to you. And
thank you, Corey.
Look forward to the next.
Appreciate it.